So I want to talk a little bit about that because you brought it up. I have some notes and you just reminded me of those notes. And that is that term, social literacy. There was another one there. I might have to refer back to it. There were two things that I think you were trying to build into to this thing, and that was one of them.
Social literacy, verbal agility.
That's it, verbal agility.
Verbal agility.
Yeah, which those skills are critical in business, relationships, self-defense, offense, all of those kind of, you can put those in anywhere, and we are, as a society, are lacking that at a very high level. And when you get into an environment like this, if it was lacking at all, like take 15 percentage points off of that, right? And that is the thing, that's the 15 percentage points could mean the difference between you living or dying in a particular situation. So can we talk just a little bit about some of the context of how that applies in the training, in the delivery of in the messaging that I heard from you guys yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a little bit of it? Yeah.
So the first thing is, I think if we're teaching people the most effective and insidious ways of carving up and shooting other human beings, how can you not demand social literacy, right? How can you not, to do that, I think it's fairly irresponsible. I think there's a lot of unhealthy shit in this racket. And like Brian, we don't use the word industry because it's not an industry. It's a loose collection of personality-driven fiefdoms. That's what it is. It is, But I've always felt if I'm gonna empower, if I'm gonna give people these skills, then my responsibility to teach them as best as I can, social literacy and verbal agility, and not let it get there. I think if you're teaching people, if you're sending poorly adjusted, armed people out into the public, that's irresponsible. And as I've gotten older, and watched kind of what's happened with people, not just the younger generation, but people even my age, the people who are there's a lot of bad mental health, man. There's a lot of bad emotional health. There's a lot of disconnected people, and people more than ever. I suspect that it's due to technology, and all the reading and research.
We'll know more in a little while.
I was going to say,
we'll learn.
But I think I see it a lot. We see it every weekend. We see people who are armed and maladjusted with a perception of what a problem is and how they're going to fix it. And we see people all the time draw guns when they shouldn't. We run a full spectrum evolution on Sunday in ECQC that ties in everything from a harsh word to a gunshot and everything literally in between.
Yep.
Right. And when we do that in a class of 20 people, typically I'll say, hey, all right, we've seen people come together and talk and leave, and it's completely benign. We've seen words raised and fists fly and guys get up and walk away. We've seen people who get in fist fights and draw weapons and don't use them. We see them get in fist fights, draw weapons, and use them. We see them draw weapons preemptively and not use them. We see them draw weapons and use them when they absolutely shouldn't have. All right? And when you look at all of these outcomes and how many of them was marksmanship a significant factor in a win or a loss? And when you frame it that way, and then you say, okay, now contrast that with how much of your actual time you spend developing that skill. Marksmanship and putting a bullet at speed where it needs to be right now, that's an excellent problem-solving modality in a very narrow range of problems in a much wider swath of humanity. So one of the things about an interdisciplinary course is that it's a paradigm shift for people on a well-placed word is as potent as a well-placed shot in a given moment. And that's one of the big lessons in our coursework is that. And you know, I demand it. I'm adamant about it. I preach hard about this more and more every day. In fact, and this module, because, you know, the language component, the social literacy component is so underserved in the training community. I'm like, you know what? We're at the Combatives Conference. Everybody's doing, combative stuff. We are going to serve this piece, right? And it's interesting that John makes everybody do it, right? Because the way the conference starts off is, or the way the conference started off this year was everybody did his module. So mostly everybody here should be here and they can more or less pummel an underhook, and
all the instructors get to stand back.
And then the next thing that happens is everybody does my module, right? So that's how the rest of the physical activity is framed for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And when we present and we come on board, what the attendees see is us in lockstep, delivering at a level of precision that they're not accustomed to, and it sets the tone for the rest of the conference.
And not only that, people don't realize the friction that knowing how to talk and knowing how to have that verbal agility applies friction on somebody, that it's powerful, and people don't realize how powerful it is. And it's like Craig says sometimes, you want to be as verbally agile as a comedian. I mean, that's
when
how
he's working the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's the black belt of verbal agility and social literacy. You know, the guy that can stand up in the room and somebody can heckle him and he can go right back and heckle him right back without, losing the room, and about not getting mad.
Again, not getting out of control emotionally.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Exactly.
Emotional control and temperament is extremely important. If we were to think of what is the most important self-defense skill that you can possibly have, that every single person in here did it the moment they left the conference, and then when they leave today, they will do it again. It is talking. It's communication, verbal agility. And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to speak really, really fast and tell jokes and get the other guy to laugh. It means that whatever current course of action you're trying to take with your communication that's not working, you realize immediately it's not working, and you switch to another one. Carrot, stick, comedy, anger, increase the volume, decrease the volume, increase the vocal fray in your voice, make a longer pause, give some compliance, cooperative compliance, stop, and I'll talk to you. Can you do that? That's the verbal agility part. And then our social literacy. If a person approaches you, can you read them properly? Do you understand the kinesics? What is that body telling you? What are their words telling you? What is their demeanor telling you? And can you describe all of those? That part is hard, the description, explaining what you're seeing. And we've been having this conversation. How are we good at assessing a person? How can I look at someone and I'm able to say that guy, if he gets one more point of friction, is going to be so task saturated he'll lose his composure. How are any of the three of us good at that? We're good at pattern recognition. We have some fairly high level experience, whatever that means to people. But there's guys who can do it with none of that. So what makes you good at that? That's kind of the thing we've been exploring. How do I articulate what makes us good at it so we can give that better to people?
Somebody else.
Because if they take that away from the course, that will serve them way better than the thumb pectoral index that they'll probably never use. Though if they need it, that's the best way to solve that tiny problem.
And we initially give them the hack, right? We give them the playlist so that they can do this with automaticity and not have to think about it in the moment, which frees them up to be able to do what Brian's saying.
Be available.
Brian's saying that now I can look at what your body's telling me as my mouth does what it does by being very simple with my playlist when somebody approaches me and I don't know what they want.